SD-WAN, basically the automated way, the software-defined networking part, which is basically going to change the way we are doing our WAN communication. Right now, in our WAN communication, we have a two-way to connect to the different things, like many branches of a company. Suppose there is a one company which having a head office and having something like a 2, 3 branches like this. And they want to connect these branches to each other's with the head office. This is my HQ. I want to connect with the all branches. These are my branch number 1. This is my branch number 2. Then I have a branch number 3, like this, right? So why it is required? Because obviously any company which having the presence in many cities or all over the country, they need to have some kind of exchange of data. Now, this connectivity between the branch and the headquarter or between the two branches, how it can be possible? It can be possible if suppose all my these branches are in a just in a one place, in a one campus. So obviously they can use their local connectivity and they can have the proper communication with the help of even private IP address. There is no requirement of anything in that case. But in the case, if they are not at the same place, maybe at a different place in a city, maybe in a different cities, or maybe in a state. So what option is left with any company, those who want to have a proper connectivity between their branches and the headquarters? The first way, obviously, is the internet. Your all the branches can have internet connection and as well as the headquarters, and they all can connect on that. Right? This is the one option that my all the branches and the head office are going to connect, take an internet connection. Whatever the service provider available there, doesn't matter. You will just go and connect with them. Because once you have connectivity on internet and you have the public IP address, so there is no problem. You can connect with anyone, right? So the only condition on internet to connect with any other guys is having a public IP address. So obviously when my headquarters is connecting with the internet, the branches are connecting, they all are going to have a public IP address. Now to have support their internal branches, there are so many internal network for these things. They can use NAT concept, they can use other concept also to provide these things, connectivity between the headquarter and between the branches also. Right? Sorry. So this is the first option. And thing is here in this internet connectivity between the branches and headquarter is a very cost effective. The cost is very less. The connectivity between the headquarter and branches with the help of internet is very cost effective. You have to pay a very less amount of money. But at the same time, there are some drawback that you are getting with the internet connection. What is that? The first thing, no security you are going to get it here. Second thing, you are not going to get any quality of service kind of it. Third thing, you are not going to get the fixed speed. It depends on whatever the plan you are taking, like 100 Mbps, 200 Mbps. That will be something called as a up to speed. That we call it as a up to speed. Up to means max to max you will get 100. Max to max you will get 200. It depends on the network condition, that how much traffic is there inside of that things. So because of these problem, the branches and the head office are not going to use internet connection to connect their branches and headquarters. Yeah, for the internet purpose, for normal browsing purpose, the branches and the head office can have to provide the internet connection to their members inside that branch or the headquarters. But for having a proper connectivity between the branches and the headquarter, whatever the communication it is, maybe some confidential data you are exchanging, so which is very risky when you are sending that over the internet. Because once the data is there on the public network, you never know who is going to snoop it, who is going to tap that water, tap that data and going to create a problem for you. So this first option will be never used to provide a interconnectivity for many branches at the head office of any company. Because obviously the headquarter means where you will have a setup of your data center. This is the old way. The data center will be there, right? In the data center, there will be a many web server from which branches want to connect, as well as they also want to communicate to each other. So this internet setup was an old concept. It is not used. We shifted toward MPLS network. What is there in the MPLS network? Obviously, the connection, the branches, and all the head office will connect to the ISP. With MPLS also, the branches and the head office are going to connect with your ISP using different options available like copper pair, the old way, optical fiber, or the wireless. It depends on which kind of a connection you are taking with your ISP. So in MPLS network is basically what things you are getting. It's a private network. Your data will never go on the internet. Yeah, it's going inside your ISP, but ISP will never put that on the internet. So it will be on a private network, always. Second flexibility you are getting here, you will also use only the private IP to connect with your branches as well as with the headquarters. You don't need any global IP. If you want to this kind of a setup, you can use. And what private IP you want to use, it depends on the customer. There is no restriction from the ISP side that you can only use these spare private IP for you. You can use anyone. It's up to you because it is totally a private connection to you for each and every customer. So they are free to use any private IP, whatever they want to use. Because of this privacy, not putting anything on the internet, your data will be 100% secure. There is no if and but, right? Data will be 100% secure because I'm not going to put my information on the public network. So that will be always secure. And it will never mix up with any other customer because ISP is not for just one company to provide the connectivity with them. They are serving millions of customers. So that is the also guaranteed that your data will never mix up with any other service provider. That kind of a things you will also get it here. Third, you are also going to get the quality of service. Quality of service means a fixed kind of a speed you will get first thing. The speed will be your fixed. Suppose you are going to take a 100 Mbps link. So all the time, 24/7, you are going to get that speed. Doesn't matter what traffic is there, what congestion is there in ISP network. There will be a proper SLA, service level agreement. With the help of that, you are going to provide the speed to the customer for 24/7, something like that. Because it is on the private network, so any company, any vendor can also run many different type of services. Like they can run their multicast if they want. If they want to use any priority kind of a traffic. Priority concept means they want to set up something like a priority for their voice traffic, for their video, for the data. That can be also run, which is not possible on internet connection. So these are the benefit that we are getting in the case of MPLS network. But there is a one drawback also. One disadvantage also. There is a one disadvantage. What is that disadvantage? The disadvantage is the cost is very high in the case of your MPLS network. because it's a dedicated service to you. What the ISP is going to do? ISP is basically going to create a VR for you. I mean, a virtual network for you that will guarantee you that your data will or your routes will never be exposed to any other customer. A VRF will be configured, a virtual router inside your ISP network. So because of this, the cost is something like 10 to 100 times than our internet connection. So this setup was working till now. There was no problem at all. And what was the case with the companies? Companies having a data center at the headquarters, like this way. So if branches want to reach that server, so they are going from the branches to the MPLS network, and from the MPLS, they're going to the headquarters. Now here, the headquarter, before the data center connectivity, they are going to have their firewalls. They have their different type of routers and the access policy. They can restrict that, hey, what branch one can get, what branch two can get from the data center, what branch three can get from the data center. So it was working perfectly well. There was no problem at all. The only problem was the cost. Cost was very high, and HQ was hosting all the servers at the data center. And HQ, before connecting to any branch or any customer, even those who are here in the headquarter, any member, those who are in the headquarter or any branches, if they want to connect that, there will be a policy things, access policy, and the firewall. That's going to monitor it. Who want to connect which data center, and it will check the policy, and they will be allowed to connect on that particular server, and they will be allowed to modify something whatever is required according to their credentials, right? This setup was working perfectly well. But what problem happened? This was a very costly, first thing. Second, it is not according to our today's network requirement. What is the problem now? Now the companies are shifting this data center concept, all the web services where they are shifting all this to the cloud. They're going to shift it all on the cloud. Cloud means on the internet, they are shifting their server. So earlier when HQ was hosting that data center, that was a good concept. But now they are shifting their servers on the cloud. Cloud means like your AWS company, your Azure, your Dropbox, all these who are providing this services to the customers, to the companies. So on the cloud means everything is going on the internet. So my data center is now on the cloud. And cloud has a one way to connect. That is your internet connectivity. Because see how this, suppose this is the setup for a bank. How this bank, which is basically ABC, how the bank can force to the cloud company that, hey, you need to make a MPLS connection with my ISP. Then I will shift my servers on your cloud, right? It's totally, which is not possible because maybe the cloud is in US and your company is working here in the India. So that is not possible to have this kind of a setup. So basically the cloud companies are providing connectivity with the help of internet like this, a public network. It's a public network. Yeah, though there are some possibilities where we can have a private cloud also. Private cloud also on our inside the company, which will be managed by that cloud company. But that's a very rare. That it's in some cases we are still using the private and the hybrid concept, but most of the time you will see that the cloud, when we are going to shift our servers on the cloud, the only way to connect with that is the internet now. So now, what is the problem? When I shifted my whole things, the servers from here HQ to the cloud or to the data center, now if my branches want to connect the old way with my MPLS, with my MPLS network, what they are doing? The branches need to send the packet where? They need to send the packet in the MPLS network from the branch to the MPLS network and then to the HQ. Then HQ having a connectivity back to the internet with the help of a firewall or maybe some other policy informers tool will be there, and that's going to connect with the internet like this. this way. So now the problem, if I'm using the old way of my network, branch is going via MPLS network to the headquarter. Headquarter is checking the policies and all, and it is sending toward the cloud on the internet, right? It's sending it toward the internet. So the connection from the HQ to the internet has to be the very strong, right? It has to be the very strong connection because all branches are totally depending on the HQ's internet connection if they want to access anything which is on the cloud. So what is happening because of the cloud things where we are hosting our all the web services, the load on HQ is increased with the old MPLS network setups. It has to manage two things now. The MPLS connection as well as the connection to the internet has to be very strong because all the branches are going to connect with that server with this way. Earlier, it was a private network, so there was no problem with the speed to connect by my data center because it was a private network. So I can have a 1G link, 2G link to connect my data center locally. But the problem now is your HQ is taking an internet connection to connect with the cloud. And all the branches are gonna via MPLS to the HQ, then HQ to the internet to get that access of the servers on the cloud. So that is the two problem with the this old setup. The first one, still the cost is very high, right? Still the cost is very high. At the same time, the load on HQ is increased. It is not something very scalable. In future, if you suppose branches are increasing, maybe there were 300, 400, in future, something like a 1000 of branches. So that will be totally not possible or the scalable solution for this way because of this cloud, shifting to the cloud of your data center. It's going to put a lot of restriction on your bandwidth. All the time you are going to increase it. That's increasing your cost many times. So what industry come up with the new solution is that instead of looking my network the old way of an MPLS way, there is a new technology which is emerged, which is called as a SD-WAN. SD-WAN is your basically the solution for your WAN connectivity like our MPLS things. So what is there the interesting thing in this your SD-WAN? What SD-WAN suggests that if my branches as well as headquarters want to connect with the cloud there on the data center and have the access of any web services, they don't need, the branches don't need to go there. They can go with the help of SD-WAN connectivity directly to the cloud and get the access of that web servers. Same way for the branch 2. Same way for the branch 3 and same way for the HQ. Via SD-WAN connectivity, SD-WAN solution, they can directly go there. There is no restriction on the HQ. There is no burden on the HQ now that it has to maintain a very high internet speed link between the HQ and the internet for providing the connectivity to the all branches so that they can access the data center on the cloud. So that's providing a beautiful concept to shifting on the SD-WAN concept because my use case of companies are shifted. Earlier, they were on your on-premises data center. Now that all the data center is shifted to the cloud, so it's not useful things to use is still the old way of MPLS and unnecessary wasting a lot of money, and that's going to be created that problem. So here in the SD-WAN solution, SD-WAN is going to work on any underlay technology. Whatever the underlay technology you are going to use doesn't matter for it. Means SD-WAN you can also run on your MPLS. You can run on your 4G, 5G kind of network, on your internet. It's up to you. Doesn't matter. Underlay what concept you are using, it has nothing to do with the SD-WAN. SD-WAN concept is to providing a solution for your today's environment, for the today's network scenario, so that they can manage it properly. So SD-WAN is supporting all kind of a underlay, maybe your MPLS network, 4G, 5G internet, or any kind of a network. The beauty is here, earlier if I was taking a connection of a maybe 100 Mbps for my MPLS, now I will reduce that from 100 to 10 Mbps only for my MPLS. And for the rest, I will take an internet connection because on internet also it's supported. My SD-WAN is supported. So I will definitely take just a normal internet connection from the ISP to connect with my data center with the security also. So what is the benefit of our SD-WAN? It's a solution for our WAN connectivity. And what benefit we are getting here in the case of SD-WAN? We'll see it first. The cost is very less. And my underlay network can be anything. It can be your internet, it can be your MPLS also, doesn't matter. So the overlay network can be anything. Sorry, the underlay network can be anything, like internet, MPLS and all that. But apart from that things, we are getting all the beauty of our MPLS things here in the SD-WAN also. What is that? We can get the quality of service on internet, on public network. We can get the security by default, which is there. We can also get a priority setting for our traffic. Apart from these three things, which is also there in the MPLS, we are getting at the same time some other feature or some other extra advantage, which is called as a visibility. Earlier in the case of MPLS, customer was totally blind. What is happening with my traffic? What is going on with my traffic at all? I'm not able to know that. In the case of MPLS, there was two parameters. One was the trace route, one was the ping. To check that, is there any packet drop? Is there any extra hop and all that? That was all the manual process. But with the help of SD-WAN, you have the proper visibility. Why you have the visibility? Because all things will be done, all SD-WAN devices will be managed from the one central point, which is called as a controller. And that controller is providing you the GUI access of the all branches devices, means all the SD-WAN devices, including your controller itself. You can get the access of that by the GUI. So based on that, you are going to see the proper way how my traffic is flowing. You can check what kind of application is going on in my network and which application is basically taking a maximum bandwidth. Accordingly, you can plan the quality of service, the priority service, all the things you can do it because it's going to provide the full visibility and control by from a one central point. You can watch it. The traffic analysis you can do, the security analysis you can do, the quality of service analysis you can do, the log management you can do, and not only these things, you can configure each and every device centrally from a one place. You can delete anything which is not required. You can take the backup from there, only one central point from the controller. You can update the patches. You can even reconfigure the device. So all that is possible because of my SD-WAN concept. It's basically providing the automation of my whole WAN solution. So SD-WAN, you can say that it is an automation for WAN network. For the WAN network, it's providing the automation. All the devices will be automated. Earlier in the case of MPLS, when I want to configure a one single branch router, there was tons of configuration I need to create. And on the ISP side, there was also a tons of configuration. There was a configuration of OSPF, there was a configuration of MPLS, there was a configuration of BGP, there was a configuration of VRF, and if there is any segmentation routing on the tunnel things, the traffic engineering, a lot more other things. So it was a very complicated things and all was manual in the case of my MPLS. All the configuration was manual without any visibility. It was taking a lot of time to do that. But in the case of SD-WAN, it is basically automated. All things we are going to do from a one central point. We have a proper visibility. We can manage the devices properly. We can analyze my traffic things. We can analyze any application. We can check the security risk. We can manage. We can configure. We can delete and we can patch, we can back up everything. We can do it from a one place, which was totally manual before this automation concept in the networking. So there is no worry that this automation is going to replace the network engineer. Still, the network engineer will be required to do that same thing with the help of GUI. Instead of doing with the CLI, you are going to do that all with the GUI. So yeah, the only difference is the commands are not required to be remember. The concept is required to be in your mind. How to configure the IPsec, how to configure this, how to configure that. So that kind of a thing you are getting in this, which is called as a visibility. The next thing that you are getting here is your security. That is already, I have mentioned here, that the next thing that you are getting here is the zero touch deployment of your any branch device. So any new device, when you want to configure, it's not required to be configured totally on the brand side. Just a one or two piece of information that I will show you today, that how you can just configure a one piece of information on your brand side devices, and that will be all the rest will be done from the controller itself. So zero touch deployment is going to reduce your time. So the time is a very important factor in today's scenario. So to manage your all WAN network with the help of SD-WAN, time will be reduced, or the time will be means very less time required. Let me write that way. Very less time for any configuration. It means basically the term we use is scalability. Scalability is how fast you can design and deploy your all the WAN connectivity between the branches at the headquarters. So that is possible to complete your whole WAN connectivity or the WAN setup of any new company in a one day. Just one day, believe me. In just one day, you can set up a configure and make everything working in a one day by the SD-WAN solution. That is the powerful scenario, I mean the powerful concept of your SD-WAN. That's a very scalable, means it's a providing adding of any new site or creating a whole new network, WAN network for any company. It's very easy. It will be done just in a 1 or 2 day, hardly, to complete all that things. So when we are getting these features in the SD-WAN, cost cost is very low in this case. Underlay can be anything. It can be your MPLS internet or the 4G and 5G. I'm getting the quality of service. I'm getting the security, priority traffic things. I'm getting the visibility. I'm getting the zero touch deployment, and I'm getting a scalability. So if I'm getting all these things for my WAN solution, so obviously, why should I use the WAN MPLS network? So obviously, we can shift it. Maybe not in a one go, partially. Because the thing is still any company is not shifting their whole data center on the cloud. It's still very secure servers. They're keeping it and at the data center at the HQ premises. They're not shifting very secure server, because if anything is going on the cloud, on the internet, you have to have a very good security, and that security checking is not a one time. It is 24 by 7 operation. When something on public network, it has to be required that your security check should be there for 24 by 7. It is not possible to just have a look only one time in a day or the two time in a day for your security concept. You have to monitor that. And instead of that, even if you are doing that all, still there are chances to be in a trouble. Any hacker can give a big trouble to you. So that's why the companies are still not shifting their very secure and the confidential data on the cloud. Maybe in the future we'll totally shift on there, but not now. So for that access, still they require the MPLS network. Yeah, maybe the speed will be less, Earlier, suppose they were using a speed of 100 Mbps, 200 Mbps. Now they are going to use just a 10 Mbps or maybe 1 Mbps because the branches want to connect with the MPLS for just a very secure connection. And for all the rest, they will connect with your normal internet connection. So that is the beauty. That is why the whole world is crazy about the SD-WAN, shifting their WAN connectivity on that SD-WAN solution. Something which is required in the market because of the automation, because of the cloud computing, it is very much required. Old way was a good enough, but now it is required. So let's see that. Is there any question till now? All good? Anyone who want to ask anything, they can write in the chat box. You can see there. All right. So that is the reason why we are shifting toward the SD-WAN. Now, one most confusing thing with the student or the network engineer, that what kind of a device I'm going to install and my branches at my headquarters. It's simply the branches side with the device we are going to install or the headquarter we are going to install, it will be the VH device. In Cisco VIPTELA solution, I'm talking. VH device it will be. VH device means this is simply a router. Even some iOS router, those who are already working in your company, there are the option available with the Cisco. They can upgrade that. They can upgrade that same router that can support your SD-WAN solution. That can support your SD-WAN solution. So don't confuse that which kind of a device we are going to use. We can have our normal, the old routers that we were using for a long time. It can be upgraded to my same kind of a SD-WAN device, VH device, with the help of our automation, with the help of our software, we can use it. So here my branches will have the edge routers. And apart from that edge router, which is enabled by the SD-WAN, supporting the SD-WAN technology, all the downside of that branch, all the switches, all the things, you will keep it as a normal. It's up to you. If you want to keep it the old way, still it will work perfectly well. There is no problem. Because I'm looking for this SD-WAN solution for my WAN connectivity, not for my local. For the local, I have another set of solution that is called as a SDL, SDXS, software defined access network for the local things that we can also discuss, which is the automation part for the LAN network. This, which is also very popular, but because there is a lot of cost involved, a lot of changes required. So the shifting on the LAN side on automation like a SD-WAN is very slow. It will take some time, maybe more than that of your SD-WAN solution. SD-WAN was shifting fastly in a fast pace on that because the cost is involved. When the cost is very less, obviously anyone is going to use it. But for the LAN solution, which is called as a SDXS, is involve a lot of cost and there are so many glitches. So shifting on the LAN side on the automation is still very slow. Maybe in future it will be fast. So on my branch side, I just need a one router that should support the SD-WAN. Either you can use the old router to upgrade it into the new software, or if it is not supporting, you need to replace it with that. Same way, I need an edge router on my HQ side also. And HQ side, there will be also a controller things. Now, the controller, which is going to manage my all these VHS devices, means simply you can call it as a router. Don't be confused by the SD-WAN device. It's just a simple router. So on the headquarter side, I can keep my controller. The controller you can buy from the Cisco or from any vendor, maybe in a two version. Maybe you can buy a physical device, or maybe you can buy just the software and you can install it on your VM. It's up to you. Which solution will be good for you? You can install that your controller or the VM itself. If you have the space and if you have the VM, no need to buy the physical device for the controller. You can just install that on the VM and take all the license for the controller. Because nowadays, all the devices are not just a physical things. They are basically a software. You can install it on the physical box, or you can install it on the VM also. The all things, the cost and the price of every device is totally depend on the license now. What kind of a feature you want, based on that license, you will be charged. So that is the way how the vendor companies are charging to the customers based on the license, not based on the number of hardware you are going to buy. What feature you want on that license, accordingly they are going to charge. So controller, I can use it a physical device, or I can use as a VM and install it on my headquarters. Now, controller is the device which is going to provide you a human interaction point. When any engineer is going to communicate with the controller, that will be totally based on the GUI. Will be based on your GUI. So like same, we work on any operating system like Ubuntu, Windows, Mac, and all that. If I'm working with the GUI, I don't need to worry about the command syntax like of Linux, the CD, the make directory, the change directory, the touch command, nano command, right? It's not required, and it's a bit complicated to work on that Linux environment. But in the environment, when we are involving the GUI, the graphical user interface, it's very easy for anyone. Even the class 1 student or the class 2 student can work perfectly well with the window. But if you ask the same student, which is who is in a class 2 to work with the Linux, they can't, right? So that is the reason why the devices are shifted with the means changing with the help of automation GUI based access. So that the the configuration part and the management part should become very easy for the network engineer. So now the controller, once you are having that all the proper software and all the things, it's going to manage all these your V edges or the router devices from here. And the only part required on the V edges devices, I need to just configure a one IP address, and that's it. Once there is a connectivity from my edge router to the controller, controller can complete all the rest tasks, all the routing, all the other interface, security, quality of service, all things you can do it from the controller itself. That is the feature we are getting in this case of SD-WAN. So let's go back to this lab. This lab is basically based on the real scenario of the world, how the companies are shifting toward the SD-WAN. So that, see here, these are my some four here, and there are 5 sites I have. And they are connected with the help of many options, like some are connected with the help of MPLS, some are connected with the help of internet, and some are connected with the help of 4G and 5G things. See that one SD-WAN, one edge router can provide you the many options to connect. One link is going toward the internet if the customer inside that branch want to access the internet. One is going toward the MPLS if they want to connect on the secure web server access in your headquarters. One is going via the 4G and 5G, and the many ways. So your V edges can have more than one interface, and depending for what purpose you want to use it. For the normal connection, for the internet use, or for the secure connection. It depends all on you. These are not a very different kind of a devices. These are the simply routers that we are working from the last many years. Right? So we'll go inside and we'll see some interesting thing also for it. But before I go, let me check, is there any question? All right, so no question. So now, what will be the first thing? There are 2 pre-requirements when you want to set up a connection for any company. A totally new connection, or maybe upgrading that on the SD-WAN things. So let's see it with the help of a paint. So what is that requirement? The requirement is this. On my controller side, see, this is my controller. I'm just showing you the devices basically, but in the real scenario, it will be just a one compact box, or maybe hosted on the VM. So you will get that something is my controller. Then I'm going to control from my human interaction is there. for this controller from my computer, right? I'm controlling this device. Now, the two very important thing is there in setup of your SD-WAN network. What is that? Let's see that. The first thing, my controller have a three parts: vManage, vBond, and vSmart. My vManage should be properly configured with vBond and vSmart. Only then I need to connect with any branch and try to configure that with the help of controller. Controller is just one compact thing. The manage, vSmart, and vBond. We have discussed about that. What is vManage, what is vBond, and vSmart, right? They have a different specific purpose, but as a one, they are working as a controller. So that should be properly connected and they should be reachable to each other. So if I go here and see it in my lab and get the access of my vManage, which is here. If I get the access of my vManage, so we can see that can I ping my all the vBond and vSmart or not? So the normal ping command that you use on your routers and switches. The problem is every time a new technology come in the market, the trainers, those who are in this field, they unnecessarily make the things complicated. That it is something which you learn, you are going to rock. You are going to get a 200% kind of a high. And they start explaining something from very complicated way. That's confused them a lot. And they will, instead of learning something new, they confuse totally. And they stop thinking about that new technology. So it's better to correlate with the old things that you are working with that right now. Then only you will be able to get a better clarity or the better visibility about a new topology or the new protocol. So the same thing is there here in the vManage. I need to check that. Let's take the control of vBond also. Then by default password is there, the admin and admin. But if I'm using custom, that I need to change it. So vBond I have here. Let's take the access of my vSmart also. Those who are not aware that what is this things, let me go again and to explain that what is that vManage and vSmart and vBond. Here is the part. And all the three is called as a one controller. So here is that. So vManage is basically responsible for my management of my whole SD-WAN network. It is responsible for management of my whole SD-WAN solution. In that, we have a control plane, which is responsible by the vSmart. vSmart will be responsible in that controller for the control traffic management. Why? Because you know that in automation-based solution, we have shifted our control plane from the routers as well as from the switches to the central controller. So in the controller, there is a one separate device, which is a vSmart, which is going to be responsible for control traffic management for the all control plane policies, like for your routing, for forwarding the packet this way and that way, all will be the responsibility of your vSmart. Then we have vEdges. vEdges are basically my simply router and switches. They are doing the data plane. Means they are only switching the packet from here to there. They're not responsible for any control things, control plane function like a routing, ARP and all that. They're only responsible to switch the packet from here to there. That is the concept of this. And how these my vSmart, vManage and the vBond devices are communicating with each other. They are using overlay management protocol to communicate with each other. vSmart, if you want to communicate with your vEdges for the control traffic, it's going to talk with the help of OMP protocol. Right? So let's go back here on the same thing. Let's see the access, whether I get that or not. So let's go to the vSmart. Maybe the password is wrong. Admin, yep. So we get the access of my three parts of a controller of SD-WAN controller. Let's check that what thing is required there. At least see, in any this SD-WAN solution, I have already told you guys in the last class also that there are two type of VRF. What is that VRF? Virtual router, which is called in SD-WAN as a VPN. So never confuse that VPN is something else. No, it is same like a VRF in our MPLS concept. Same way in case of our SD-WAN, we call it as a VPN. So there are two by default VRF in all the devices. What is that? VRF VPN 0 and then VPN 512. This is two pre-built VRF, or we call it as a VPN 0 and 512 in the case of SD-WAN solution, is pre-built on each and every device of SD-WAN. VPN 512 is for your management, and that is also the out-of-band management. When you want to see, if I want to access my vManage device, how can I do that? Let's check that. If there is a VPN 512 is configured on my vManage, I will be able to access it from the outside also, like this way. No, 117 ways. I'm able to ping, I can log in, I can check anything locally, which is not going to disturb my any traffic path, which is going toward this edge router or toward the outside world. I'm not doing that, right? This is the one thing, which is VPN 512 out of band management of each and every device, and which is only required in the case of my controller. Because V edges, I'm not going to manage my V edges locally. I'm going to manage my V edges from the central point from the controller. So in that case, I'm not going to use my VPN 512 in that case. Second VPN, I have my VPN 0. This is for your control plane traffic and for all the rest traffic that you want to use. And by default, all my interface bind with this VPN 0 VRF. Like see, when we create a VRF, what we do? We assign that how many interface are there in my that VRF. Same way in VPN 0, by default, all the interface are there in VPN 0 VRF by default. And all the control plane traffic will be responsibility of your VPN 0. All things you will done it here. By default, on your VPN 0, only three type of traffic is allowed. TLS, TLS, and your IPsec. If you want to change it, you can change that and we'll see one by one. So let's go first to the vManage. What is there in the vManage? Simply just use the command so run and that's it. Like you was doing in the routers. So the first thing you need to clear in your mind that learning SD-WAN or maybe the SD access, DNS center, these all are very easy as compared to your learning the MPLS and any other technology. So be very clear in your mind. If you have attended any previous classes with any other mentor or the tutor, don't mix up that. Don't try to confuse here and there. My flow will be like this way. I will show you each and everything in such a way that even a class 5 or the class 10 student can also understand and start working with the SD-WAN. So because see, any mentor's job is basically not to confuse you, to not to complicate the things, just to show off that how much knowledge I have. My job is to make you very comfortable with these any new technology. So that I'm doing. So like we run the command to run, so running config, so the starting config in our routers and switches, the same we are running it here. Right now, all is erased. Why? Because just to explain all the things from the scratch. So that you should never confuse even when you are going to set up a new deployment for SD-WAN solution for any new company. So let's see that what I have here. Very basic configuration is there. Let's see that what I have. I have a something called as a system setting. This on my vManage. This is my system setting. Like we are giving the host name, like we do on our routers, on our switches. Like we are going down with this. The first thing is my host name. I can give any name, whatever the name I want to give. Then I have a system IP. Okay, this is also very confusing. Sometime maybe unnecessary the time of upgrading the software and all. Anyone is confusing with that. So let me tell you, the system IP is basically the concept like in our routers, in our OSPF, we have a router ID concept, a unique identity of my device. So that is your system IP. It's not need to be reachable. It's not need to be any configured on any particular device. It's not required. It's just a router ID concept like we have in our OSPF. So it can be any ID. Then we have a system ID. It is a number to identify you are working with which site. Because in a production network, when you are working, there will be many sites, 300 or the 400 sites. So you have to give the name for each and every site. And then after that, the organization name. What is that? Because this will be required for your certificate when you are going to install that. And after that, these are the pre-built configuration that I'm not using here. And I'm defining who is my vWAN. What is the IP of that? We can define that also here. Once it is done, then we have our username and password that you can see it. See that? Password is not this much of length, but how it is encrypting. In the case of a router, in case of our normal iOS device, if you go and check that, the hash is generated, but that's a very limited amount of, like something like this. But here the hash is so big. Okay. As I told you, in each SD-WAN device, you will get a 2 VRF. Here is my VRF1, which is VPN 0, and then I have a VPN 512. VPN 512 is basically to manage the device for the management purpose out of bad. So if I try to ping this IP 24.117, obviously I will be able to ping it. Let's check it from the outside. So it's not something I'm going to mixing it with my data things. So this is for your management purpose only. And you need to assign how to configure same way like we are configuring a VRF and then going under the interface. And then I'm writing that this interface is for VRF, IP, VRF forwarding, something like customer A, like that, right? The same way here you are doing. You are going under the VPN. If I go under my VPN 512, VPN 512, this way. And then I can go under the interface, or I can write that under this VRF, which interface is there. I can write whatever the interface I want to assign. In interface, Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3, Ethernet 4, whatever I want to write, I need to write that. And once I am going to go inside the interface, then I'm in the interface mode. Now, whatever the command available under the interface, I can configure under that. I can configure under that. Like I can configure the IP address. I can make it as a shutdown, no shutdown. A lot more command are available that you can see. I can even configure the IPv6. I can configure the MTU size. A lot more description you can write that. Like same way we are doing in our routers. The same all the things you can write down in this. To out of band management of your this interface. This is for your management. Let's get back to that. To the starting and discuss about that. VPN 0, which is very important because my control traffic and everything is going from the VPN 0 VRF. Here also I need to assign that in this VRF, which interface is there. If I have a 1, I will assign the 1. If I have a 2, 3 more, I can assign that. So I will assign that, and then first thing I will assign the IP address. IPv4, IPv6 and all that. Okay. After this, you know that on VRF 0, on VPN 0, only 3 kind of a traffic is allowed by default. DTLS, TLS, and your IPsec. So if you want to allow other services, so how you can do that? So let's go under that first VRF and then see it. Let's copy this and go under that. If you want to allow something else, then you have to go under your tunnel interface. And once you are under the tunnel interface, you can define that like this way. What kind of a services you want to allow in your tunnel interface? You want to allow the ping services, You want to allow the DNS packets also. You want to allow the DSCP. Or you can write just one way. Allow the services all. This way, you can also write that. Allow services all. So it's going to allow all kind of a traffic, which is by default not possible. So this way you can change that. What kind of a traffic I want to allow from my this VPN v0 and assign a particular interface on that. Right? Second thing, there's one more thing that I want to show you, the encapsulation. So which kind of encapsulation you want to use? By default, on my VPN 0 or on my VPN 512, encapsulation enable is your which is come out of this. By default, it is enable your IPsec on your interface. So you don't have to mention that I want to use IPsec security and all that. It is by default enable on your this VPN v0 interface as well as 1512. If you want to change it from the IPv6 to the GRE, then you can change that by the command of encapsulation and changing it from that IPsec to the GRE. So this is the only basic setting I have on my vManage till now. Just two VRF, which is by default, as you know, these are my by default setting. VPN 0 and this, I have a username and password. I have my system setting, giving the name and all that things. Apart from that, if you want to manage your files on the controller, that which kind of files you have, whether the certificate is there in my controller or not. So all that you can go and manage it from here, vShare. It will be something like a Linux environment that you can manage here all your file system. So if I want to see that first, how many files I have these much of file. And basically, that your vManage is going to have all the certificate of all the devices, like your edge routers, your vBond, vSmart, all they have their certificate. Why it is required? Because my v managed device is working as a root CS server also, which is going to authenticate each and every device. Because the problem is, if any device, if you know your network range, if he can configure a VS device, a hacker, and he is trying to connect with you, you may allow them if there is a no certificate concept to authenticate. So that is the thing which is very important. When you are connecting with any site, two things are required. Any branch when you are connecting or any VS device connecting, two things is required. The first thing will be the IP address. You need to configure a IP address on your VHS devices, and that should be reachable to the controller. Under your VPN 0, you can configure on that also. It's not required to manage all the devices out of band, which is 512, because VPN 512 is locally. So obviously, I want to manage my devices from the controller, from the remotely, not from the locally. So in the case of VHS, that 512 VPN is not a useful concept. We can leave it like that. Same way like you work with the router. So one question I'm getting that where to put the firewall rules with the SD-WAN. So you can put your firewall wherever you want to use it. Before that, your SD-WAN device when you're going to expose to the internet, or behind your SD-WAN device where you want to secure some servers. Same concept that you was using earlier, the same will be with your SD-WAN also. SD-WAN is not creating any restriction for that. Whatever you was doing with your firewalls and all, it will be the same setup. Nothing will change with that. Right. So it's up to you where you are going to host it or plant it here. It's not going to change anything, your placement of server or the firewall anywhere. The first thing requirement is the IP address. The next thing will be required will be your certificate. Each and every device need to give its digital signature, and that digital signature should be verified by the vManager. If vManager is able to authenticate your certificate, only then my vManager will make a connection with you and configure it at the controller. And from there on, after that, you will be able to manage it from there. So this two thing is required to connect any V edges or the branch router with my controller. Even in the headquarter, if I have the vManage device, I need to do that. So that is why you can see that if I'm using my vManage as a root server, instead of using an outer external device in a production network, obviously you will use a external CS server, certifying authority. Like any window device, a window server you will use as a CS server or the certifying server, which will be as a root server, which is going to authenticate, which is going to take the responsibility when any VH device is sending its digital signature. The CS server will certify that yes, it is an authentic device. It is your network device. It is not any third-party device or any from else. Or in the case of our lab setup, we can also make our vManage as a root server. That I'm doing it here in this case. Can use my vManage as a root server also. And in that, if I'm using it as a root server, so obviously all the digital certificate from my edge devices as well as from my the vBond and vSmart will be installed here. See that VH certificate I have, the vBond, vSmart, all certificate I need to be here. CSR and CRT file. CRT file I will generate and I will send it to where? To my devices, to my vBond, vManage, and the VHS devices. And this is helpful anytime when you are going to add a new device in the branches. These two things are there. If there is an IP connectivity on VPN v0 and your certificate is valid, and that will be validated by the CS server or by the vManage itself, if it is working as a controller, then that will be easy to do that things. Same way, if I go on my vBond, vManage, the console will get for the vManage, and we are going to manage everything by the GUI after that. Same way, if I go and check my configuration of my this vBond, you can see that there is also two VRF, VPN 0, and then I have a VPN 512. This way. Anything, any routing even I'm configuring, I need to mention it inside the VRF that in case of our normal router, when we are configuring a VRF, so we also need to define the routing protocol inside my VRF. So same thing is happening here. I'm just configuring a static route inside my VPN 0 VRF to reach with my vManage device or to my all the VHS device. Because my this 00 is going pointing out toward the internet or toward the MPLS network, right? That way. Same way you can check it here also. If you want to check the file system and all that, you can go under the vShell and then you can check that what file system I have. So obviously it will have a root certificate from the vManage. If there is a server, you will get it from there and your own certificate, your cert and CSR file. CSR file, you are going to send it to the CS server. CS server is going to sign it with the digital signature and return it to the certificate. So all the time you are going to present the certificate to the vManage. vManage is going to challenge that digital certificate from the CS server or from itself. It depends on. All right. The same way, there is one more command that you can use. So system status. If you want to check that whether it is working properly, all the application inside my vBond or not, you can check it here. The status should be as a green and all the application are running properly up and all the other features of your this device. Same way, if I go upside and my configuration, I just allowed my all the things. Why I allowed that ICMP and DNS? Because I want to also test the ping and all, whether we are able to reach from the vBond to the vManage or not. In that case, I require it, right? So I need to configure these things under my that things. If I try to ping 172.16.24.117, which is my vmanage, I am reachable. So the first condition, there should be a IP reachability. Second condition, certificate should be there in my devices. If it is there, only then it's going to work all the day. Same way, if I go and get the access of any VH device here. We get the access of edge router, which is working on the SD-WAN concept here. If I go and check my running config here, you will get the same things like we get it on the vmanage, vbond, vsmod and all. System, under the system configuration, will have the host name, system IP. It's something which is totally locally significant for you for giving a unique name, like something the router ID in the case of OSPF. And then we also give the system site ID, which is the basically to the identify which site it is. Then there is your organization name and all that things you will allow here. Configure the username and password, and then you go here. See that. Here also I have, because in all SD-WAN devices, 2 VRF will be the by default. But here in the case, I'm not using it. Why? Because my plan is not to use my edge routers locally, physically, right? It's out of band management for your device. So if I'm not going to use it, keep it like that. No need to give any IP or anything else. Leave it like that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to configure my interface 02, give the IP address, and I want to be managed from my vManage. So there should be a connectivity from that. If it is there, I may be allow for the testing purpose these traffic also, the DSCP, DNS, ICMP, and SSH. And or I can allow my all services. Why? Because under VPN 0, by default, only 3 kind of a traffic is allowed. DTLS, TLS, and IPsec. So here you can see that all this configuration we have, just a basic one. If you want to see your file system here also, so obviously it will also have that file. Right now you can see that I have just a CSR. I didn't get my certificate CRT file. If you don't have the CRT file, you will never be able to connect with your controller, and your controller will never add you as the authentic VH device. So it is must. There should be a certificate file, and it has to be generated by the CA certificate, CA server, a Windows server machine, or maybe locally from your vManage. Then only it is possible to access that. Now, apart from this, this is the basic way how you are going to deploy your devices and how you will connect that with the help of vManage. Just a very basic thing, right? With the help of IP address and the certificate that you are going to use. 2 by default VRF for the VPN will be there, that is going to be used for it. Apart from that, if you want to configure some other VRF for your local connectivity, means your these interface is going toward the switches, toward the clients, then you can also create your other VPN things. Any number from VPN 1 to all, you can configure it. So if I exit from there, and if I go in my configure terminal, and I want to configure my VPN 1. So let's see that first. I can configure any VPN from 1 to 65,000, something like that, except 0 and 512, because this is by default created. So let's configure a VPN 1. And under that, what I can do, I can assign any kind of interface that I want to assign. This way. Interface, let's see that what is available here. Interface Ethernet 1, 2, 3, whatever is available, will allow that. And then we'll configure to see that it is available or not. So any interface that you have available, you can configure a new VRF for your internal devices like these devices, and you can configure it. So from the configuration point of view, Do not worry about it. It's not a big task, or it's not a kind of a something which is very complicated. If you go step by step, you will be able to solve it in an easy way. You will be able to solve it in an easy way. Anytime when you are doing changes, you have to do the command commit. Commit means like the same command, save command. In the case of our iOS devices, do you have any exposure, you guys, working with the iOS XE or XR operating system of Cisco? Those who are having the exposure, they know about what is the commit command. Commit is same like your save or the write command. In XE and XR, we have this kind of a setup or the command which is not there in our iOS or the legacy operating system iOS. All right, let's get back to here in these things. So now internally, I have suppose gigabit 02, 02, 03, all that I can keep it in a separate VRF. And then we can make a policy that from this branch to this branch, how they will communicate. If they want to communicate, I will keep them in a same separate VRF, like maybe the VPN 1, 2, 3, 4. And we all do that from where? From the vManage. I don't need to do any configuration once it is managed by my vManage, by the controller. I can manage as well as I can watch or the check each and everything what is happening on my disk. But unfortunately, right now, because I erased all that things, the software and itself, so we are not able to get the access software. But if it is working, I need to work on this to restore all these things. Once it is there, you are all good to set. Go to configure your all the devices and bind it with the controller. And that controller is going to configure any kind of a routing, any kind of your interface configuration, any kind of your VRF configuration. All will be done from the vManage using the GUI ones. And in a big production network, basically we not do it on a one device basis. We are going to make a templates. All things is going to be based on the templates. Template means ready-made configuration is available for my interface, for my OSPF, for my BGP, for my loopbacks and all that. I need to just change the parameters, my numbers, and I need to just send it, fire the command from my controller to the edges devices. And that's it. These are the basic things. Once you are done with the basic things, you are going to deal with some other things, the advanced things, like for your the management purpose, for the quality of service, for some application specific tasks. All that will be in a phase wise. So step by step, first to uh, install all that VHS devices, combine it with the vManage once it is there, configure some basic parameters so that you will be used to with that. Then configure the OSPF interface and all that, take the backup, do the patch upgradation and all that. When these basic thing is done, you can learn also the advanced thing like the quality of service, other tunneling, other policy, other management option, all that. Okay. So this is the way how I'm going to take this SD-WAN classes. If you guys like my teaching style, you can 100% vouch it, and my backend team will be there to help you, to guide you. Can we have a one-to-one meeting after the class? Obviously, our backend team is going to connect with you for a one-to-one meeting, definitely, 110%. Okay. And there you can discuss about each and everything about the lab, about the classes, about the timing, about the cost, all things you can discuss about the recording, the study material, each and everything you can discuss one-to-one. My backend team is there. They are going to discuss with you guys. Okay. My motto was only to show you my style, my teaching way, how I'm going to take these classes. My job is not to make the things complicated. My job is primarily to make the things in a simple way. So you should feel very comfortable about that. That, yeah, I can learn it. Can you please tell me? Okay. So the detail about admission and all the process, it is there. The link is available. You need to just connect on that link. If you guys can see that chat. there is information about from the backend team. For admission, for the pricing and the contact, you can click on that. On the networkjourney.com, or the phone number is given, or the WhatsApp number is also given. You can just go there and connect with them. Otherwise, or the backend team will definitely connect. So these are the options that you have available with you. Mohammed, is it clear? You can see that there is the message from our backend team for the admission, pricing, and all. On that number, you can connect directly one-to-one communication with my backend. Okay. Did you get any doubt apart from this, Mohammed? Right. All right. So with this good note, we are going to stop here. Please drop your feedback and please connect with our backend team on the given number and the URL. And obviously, they are going to help you a one-to-one way and will try to clear your any confusion regarding this class, regarding the lab and all the things. All right. Have a good day. We are going to stop with this. If no any loads, any involved load balancer, see that whatever you are doing with your all the previous things, like here, if I go at the data center, I have some servers I'm running on the cloud. So no problem. Whatever the load balancer you are going to install there and you're going to manage it, it isn't going to affect your SD-WAN kind of a thing. Not a firewall, not any load balancer. All the old setup that you are using will be same way this way. But yeah, if you want to use the some feature of that our SD-WAN, obviously there will be some concept that will cover up in that. All right. So if there is no more question, we can stop here now. All right, everyone. Bye. We'll connect on these given number and the URL for with our backend team to get the detailed information about the method and price. Thank you, everyone, and bye. I'm going to leave this.